Story number 1. The job offer. In the middle of June back in 2012, I received a job offer after about a week of searching. It was barely after graduating uni for my Bachelor of Science. Riddled with debt and sinking in the sorrows of unemployment, I snatched the opportunity to earn a decent keep. When I saw the price tag on the job, a decent keep seemed like pocket change. I cannot emphasize how suspicious and ludicrous the pay was, but also how down on my luck I'd been as far as jobs were concerned. I'm talking a 6-digit payoff for only about a few days of work. Hell yeah, sign me up. I called the number written on the email as instructed. It rang a few times, but eventually a sharp-voiced lady answered in a friendly enough tone. Welcome to Kalen Research Center. How may I take your call? I was taken aback. This sounded official. I realized either this was a very complicated ploy to kidnap me, extort me or something, or a very, very lucky employment opportunity. All three were better than being unemployed for another day though, so I went through the recruitment process and before I knew it, I was on a plane to Alice Springs in the Northern Territory. 2 other scientists were on the plane with me. A young, very, very young Asian man with slick black hair and wide-rimmed glasses covering a pair of brown eyes. Adjacent to him and across from me, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s wearing a suit, with dirty blonde hair and hazel eyes, locked onto a pristine newspaper. The Asian man was very impatiently tapping away at his laptop, and the two made me feel very unprofessional in comparison. We'd exchanged simple greetings, but I decided to introduce myself before I developed some kind of inferiority complex. So, who do I have the pleasure of flying with this morning? I said, in what I hoped was a semi-professional and sophisticated tone. Oh, of course, the Asian man piped up, eyes darting from his laptop over to me. I'm Nguyen-dong. I just finished my master's last month, but I'm here on account of my drilling experience. I reached out and shook his hand, while wondering what a drilling expert and a geographical scientist like myself could possibly be doing in Alice Springs. Our other companion cleared her throat. Ella Paraday, she said, shaking my hand. I'll be helping with any technological aspects of the project. Speaking of which, do either of you know the objective? I shook my head, mentioning that we might receive it when we arrived. The two agreed, and we settled in for the trip. We left the airport as quick as we arrived, meeting a man whose sign had all 3 of our names written on it. He instructed us to proceed to the taxi bay. There, we went to the vehicle he described, notably one without a driver, and we got in. The doors were not even locked. That's a bit strange, Nguyen said, sitting down in the front seat after calling shotgun. Must be a note around here somewhere. It's like a treasure hunt, hey? Ellera gave him a stern look from the back of the car, but quickly discovered a large white envelope on the seat. Inside was a tablet with 3 boxes on the screen. She moved it to the middle of the car so we could all get a better look. The first box read, Message 1, and the other 2 and 3, respectively, albeit grayed out. We agreed to try the first message. Message 1. Depart from Alice Springs at 2200 using the provided transport. A location has been entered into the issued vehicle's GPS which will be your first and final destination. You will arrive at 0530. Provisions are in the trunk. The second instruction will be decrypted on arrival. Seeing as it was 2200, and with nothing else to go on but a sudden and sharp air of suspicion, we followed the instructions. The drive took a few hours, and I wasn't used to driving on outback terrain. It was all rocky and weird, yet flat. The GPS said we were headed into Western Australia, across the Tanami Desert. As per the instructions, we arrived at 0530. Well, closer to 0540, but arriving right on time was a shot in the dark out there. The sun was hopefully making an effort to crawl up into the sky. A sudden beep from the tablet caught our attention and all shook off the sleep as sufficiently as possible. The second message was no longer grayed out, so we tapped it. Message 2. Congratulations on reaching your destination. In the cargo crate, located in the trunk labeled Duong, is a high-capacity powered drill set. Deploy it 75 meters from your vehicle on flat slate of ground. Upon activation, the final instruction will be decrypted. Alarm bells ringing in your head? Sure was happening to me, but I bit my tongue on the thought of money. I know it was cheap and selfish, not to mention dangerous, but neither Nguyen nor Alara spoke up either. So it was safe to say that they had the same thing in mind. We stepped out of the car and walked the distance we had to, before stopping and letting Nguyen do his thing. I carried the lantern that I'd procured from the trunk and observed the dusty landscape as we waited. No one would be around for kilometers on end. Nguyen put down the large, complex metallic object that he had been carrying and fixated it to the ground with a series of spiked clamps. The cylindrical shape of it resembled a large drain pipe, but the metal cap on top was clearly designed to be open. The scientists attached another device to the top before giving us the thumbs up. "That's it?" I asked. "Alara, what does the tablet say?" She gave me a disgruntled look, brushing the fringe of her hair to the side. "Nothing yet," she said, before pausing. Then it beeped. "Okay, third message. It says, well done for deploying the drill correctly. Open the crate labeled Carter and Paraday. Retrieve the item from Carter's crate and, using the equipment provided in the rear of the vehicle, lower it down the hole and relay the results to Paraday's item." "Maybe we should head back to the car then?" Alara asked, squinting her eyes to the contrast between artificial and natural light. Nguyen nodded. "I'll wait here. I just want to make sure this is 100% ready to go. It's simple enough, but I've never used this particular model before. Carter, could you leave the lantern?" I obliged, setting it down next to him. Ella returned and started heading back to the car, as I followed along behind her. I wanted to maintain an air of professionalism since she seemed to be the opposite of the head out and make friends in the middle of nowhere type of scientist. But my suspicions were naturally making me eager to talk openly. Buttoning down the caution, I headed to the rear of the trunk with her. Inside were 2 crates that we'd seen earlier, marked with both our names. Alara opened hers first. "It's a laptop," I declared, peering over her shoulder. "Control terminal," she sharply corrected. "It's used for relaying data between different local devices. Standard project resource." "Uh-huh," I answered. I wondered what could possibly be inside my crate, but my thoughts were quickly answered. It was a microphone. Not the standard kind of microphone that you might see on a TV music show, but similar. Something wasn't right here. But my thoughts, once again, guiltily fell on the money. I collected my item from the crate and the cables provided with it before heading back out to Noyan. "All set?" "You bet. What have you got for me?" "A microphone and a control terminal," I said, realizing how strange that sounded. It said to lower them down and relay whatever we record to the terminal. I glanced across to Alara, who was already busy setting it up. "Correct," she said dismissively, and I turned back to Noyan. "So, do you need to drill now, or?" "It's all done, actually. Pretty cool, right? It's high-powered, precise, and silent. I've never seen anything like it, but the readings show it's definitely down there." "How far down?" I felt nervous just asking that question. A giant hole into the earth had such an ominous air to it. "Somewhere between 5 and 6 kilometers," he answered casually. My breath caught in my throat. That was a long way for such a short time. "Oh, okay. Let's do this then," I muttered, as Alara gave a remarkably professional thumbs up. Noyan smiled and removed the cap of the drilling hole. Attaching the microphone to the winch kit supplied, he gave the all clear, and we began lowering the huge spool of wire down the hole. All that was left was to wait for it to reach the bottom. I stood up, sure that Noyan could monitor the drilling hole side of things, and I headed back to Alara. To be honest, just the idea of being so close to an open hole that far down, regardless of the fact that I probably couldn't even fit my foot in it, it was a bit too much for me. The well-dressed woman was crouched awkwardly in front of the terminal set. Noticing my presence, she reported the situation. Predictably, the microphone is already connected via signal to the terminal. "Audio is all we're looking for. Then we can leave," she said bluntly. "Not looking forward to roasting marshmallows?" I jested. The look she shot me was enough of an answer. "I'm not the morning type, Mr. Carter, but please, allow me to do the job I was assigned." And so I did. We sat and waited, with nothing but the sound of unspooling wire to keep us company. The first few minutes were uneventful, the microphone occasionally hitting the side of the drill tunnel with a dull thud. In fact, I would have chalked this up as a really well-constructed prank, if it wasn't for the obviously expensive equipment that we had been provided. It just begged the question of who the supplier was. But I had nothing to go on but Kalen Research Center. What kind of data were they looking for anyhow? For a project like this, I'd have expected mineral withdrawal or deep drill sampling. Audio seemed pointless. Just as I was about to suggest that this was pointless and we were probably never getting paid, something on the terminal moved. "A stable audio trace," Alara muttered, mostly to herself. "And it's not the sound of the microphone hitting the sides anymore. Listen." I drew my body closer to the terminal and listened as closely as I could. There was the sound of the wire unspooling, but it quickly stopped. It must have reached its full length. I continued pressing my ear towards the terminal, and I finally heard it. It was faint, but there was a noise. "Alara, can you amplify that?" I asked, struggling to hear the continuous sound. It hadn't hit home yet, just what the sound could be. Tapping away at the terminal, Alara applied some sort of amplification effect. "I'll just increase it to..." Screams. Blood-curdling, horrifying screams. The screams of someone being disemboweled and flayed alive. It sounded like a dying, cornered animal, but human. So human and raw. I stumbled away from the terminal, and Alara squealed. "Shit, shit, shit," I shouted, blocking my ears. The screams intensified, like a helpless victim being set on fire and torched alive. Noyan came running over, asking what was wrong. We didn't have to answer for him to understand. "Fuck this, we're leaving. To hell with the money," I shouted, kicking myself away from the terminal and standing up. Nobody protested, and we ran straight for the vehicle. We left behind the drill, the microphone, and that damn terminal that wouldn't stop unleashing those wretched, howling screams. The sound burned into my ears. I slammed the door shut, hitting the ignition. I didn't want to, but on instinct, I caught a look through the rearview mirror. The terminal showed a different color to before. It was plain white, with bold black letters, reading, "Data sent." The screen turned off. I turned around, and I floored it. We did not look back. None of us spoke. Nobody said a word for the hours that we drove through the Tanami Desert. We eventually returned to Alice Springs and quickly met the man who held our signs for us upon arrival. My instinct was to interrogate him, to shout at him or obtain answers. But after a quick few questions, it became clear that he knew nothing about it. He did, however, have our tickets back home. We parted ways at the airport, taking our separate flights back home. Never again did I hear anything of the company, Kalen Research. Nor did I ever want to. Story number 2. I live in remote Australia, and I've had some experiences. I'd first like to say that I was really inspired by the search and rescue stories, and I wanted to share some of my own experiences with the great wilds here in Australia. I live in a pretty rural town in the middle of Oz, and my house is on the outskirts. Almost everywhere surrounding the town is Crown land, sacred indigenous land. I used to go out there very often with my brothers and my mates, but I truly regret going out there on my own the most. I'm not 100% sure where to start because I have a few stories to tell. So I'll begin with the one I remember the best. I was about 11 at that time. My best friend was sleeping over my house, and he asked if we could go out and explore a bit. Now, this was after I had already had a few weird happenings out there, so I wasn't 100% excited to go out there, but he seemed really keen. We went out at maybe 3 or 4 in the afternoon for at least 2 hours, and we would have been maybe 1 or 2 kilometers out, reaching an area that I had never been before. I suggested to my friend that we should start heading back, but he didn't answer. He was just staring across a small valley at the peak of the other hill. "What is it?" I said, somewhat nervously. "I'm not sure." "I think it's a person," he said quietly. I saw it then too. A human figure on top of the hill, but it was as tall as the trees. I was about to say we're going home, but before I even opened my mouth, the thing starts bounding down towards us, taking these crazy big steps. I can't even describe the fear that shot through me. We both immediately ran full pelt back to my house, and let me say, my friend was the one that would always win the school foot races, and I was the tubby dude that barely makes it across the line. Yet there I was, keeping pace with him. I was that scared. I quickly turned my head back for a second, and the thing was back on the hill where we first saw it. But that didn't slow us down. We didn't say a word the whole way back. But when we got to the front of the gate of my place, we had nothing to say other than, "What the hell?" We joked about it the next day, but we both know how messed up it was. And we've never spoken about it since. The next incident was one when I was on my own. I think I was 14, going through a really depressed time. I had had a fight with my parents and I just walked out. For some reason, I thought the best thing to do was pick a direction and just keep walking. I was only gone for 10 minutes when suddenly I was somewhere completely foreign to me. I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if I just lost my memory of my journey to wherever I was or what. But it was a sudden realization of not knowing where the hell I was. I don't know why, but I wasn't necessarily scared at the time. I felt not safe, but comfortable with my situation, which makes no sense looking back on it. I lived on the east side of town, and it was morning when I left, so I just started going away from the sun and hoped I would find my way back. Within 5 minutes, I came across something really eerie. It was a bench. A wooden bench that must have been freshly varnished, because I was standing maybe 15 meters from it and I could smell it very clearly. I was really creeped out because there was no man-made structure inside at all. I ran past and I kept going until I couldn't see it anymore. This is when I luck out big time. I found an unsealed road that seemed to go the same direction as I'm headed, and I start following that instead. Then I heard a car coming from behind me, and they were kind enough to take me back into town. When I got in the car, however, I asked where I was, and he said that I was around 15 kilometers west of town. What's even weirder is that it was now 3:15 p.m. and I left at 9 in the morning. This next one's a short one. My brother and I were out on the motorbikes, going along a trail that straightened out for a long way, so we both open up the throttle. His bike had a slightly bigger motor, so he pulled away maybe 30 meters in front of me, when all of a sudden, he gets launched backwards as if there was a wall that only he hit, but his bike didn't. I helped him up, and he said he was fine, which I found hard to believe. But we eventually made it back home, and he said that he was still perfectly fine, and he acted as if it hadn't even happened. Every time I ask him about it, he says he doesn't remember anything like that happening. Another short one, and the most recent so far. I was at a party. Me and some friends had walked back to my best mate's house to stay the night, because it was only a block away from the party. Everyone fell asleep pretty quickly, but 2 hours went by, and I still couldn't doze off, so I decided to walk home, which was only about 10 minutes away. I hadn't quite sobered up yet, so I didn't really bother trying to hold my head up. I just looked up occasionally in case I was about to run into something. At the street just before mine, I look up and I see a dingo in the middle of the road looking at me. Normally, when a dingo sees a person, they bolt in the opposite direction. But this one, it just stood there, motionless. I froze for a second, and then I crept slowly forward, unsure of what to do. I soon realized that it was still facing the same direction. Completely confused and kind of scared, I look forward, and I go back to walking at a very brisk pace. When I turn my head to see if it's chasing me, it's completely vanished, without a sound. I eventually got home, but I didn't get any sleep. The more I try to recount these things, the harder it gets to remember them all. So that's all I'll post for now. I might make another post later on if I can. Story number 3. Outback Camping. This camping trip turned into a genuine horror movie when I was visited in the dead of night by a group of rancid people. For context, I live in the Northern Territory, and I wanted to get away from everyone, especially my insane family. I did some research on some large open areas, and I found that the largest farmland in Australia was Anna Creek Station. Apparently, this land is bigger than all of Israel or something. I packed my stuff and drove the 400-kilometer trip in my 4x4 camping rig. I got out there and I was feeling good. Set up my gear and I was ready for my first meal. It was about 9 p.m. when I got tired and I decided to go to bed. I sleep in the back of my rig as it's an SUV, 100 series Land Cruiser, and I feel much more comfortable here than if I was in a tent. At around 1 in the morning, I woke up, not sure why. As I was trying to fall asleep again, I started to hear heavy footsteps around my ute in the dirt. They were irregular footsteps. They would take 3 steps in one direction, then 3 steps toward my ute, slowly getting closer and closer. I was really regretting having the back windows cracked now. As the footsteps grew closer, they seemed to be becoming more frequent, while somehow keeping the same rhythm. 3 steps left, 3 steps forward, 3 steps right, and so on. They got closer and closer, And now, I was hearing the steps coming from both sides of my ute. I'm 100% sure that this is no animal. There's nothing out here that would walk like that. At this point, I was shitting bricks, and I didn't dare to move or make any noise. Whoever was out there would know for sure there was someone in the vehicle. Who would leave a car out in the middle of nowhere 3 hours drive away from anything? At this point, they're right outside the car. My tinted windows were keeping me from being seen, at least I hoped. I hear something scratching on the window right beside me. It sounded like metal on glass. I could barely see out of my window, but if there was something there, I would have definitely seen a silhouette at least. Both sides of my window were now being scratched, as well as the back window. Now, at this point, I know there are at least 3 people outside, trying to either get in or get me out. I was shaking from the terror and the adrenaline. I'm usually a fighter when it comes to people messing with me, but something about these people made me go into a flight response. I tried to creep my way into the driver's seat, but as I moved, my knee squished against something that made a loud crinkle noise. The scratching stopped on a dime. Everything went completely silent for what felt like hours. And suddenly, the most blood-curdling screams were let out all around the car. There were like 7 or 8 of these things outside. It sounded like the scream of a mountain lion, which we definitely don't have here. It was clearly something else. The scratches and screams on the windows turned into banging. The entire car was swaying from side to side as these things were hitting it. They were incredibly strong. They would have probably tipped the car if they tried hard enough. I sprung into action, jumped in the driver's seat, and turned on the car. In front of me, hunched over, was what looked like an older man. About 5'10", very pale, dirty, and wearing no clothes. He did not have any weapons, but his fingernails were at least 12 centimeters, 5 inches, and very sharp. This was the only part about him that looked unnatural. 6 more of these people ran in front of the car, screaming their heads off, banging on the bonnet. They all looked different, except they were all pale, overly long nails, and no clothes. I threw it into first, and I peeled off out of there. They were sprinting behind me. The red glow from the taillights made them look devilish. I was reaching 40 k's an hour, and I was barely losing them. I got about 20 k's down the rugged path, and they were no longer in sight. I pulled the ute over, just to think on what the hell just happened. I was petrified, and the adrenaline was long gone. I broke down in tears. I felt safe enough, and I was about to head off when I heard a quiet, animalistic groan, as well as metal on metal coming from the roof of my car. It was then when I realized I'd left the sunroof open. I didn't dare to look up. Story number 4. School camp. This has always made me question my sanity. Ever since 2017, I've had strong anxiety problems. If I'm somewhere away from home or in a stressful situation, I have horrible panic attacks. The sort where you want to vomit, have cold sweats, and feel like you're going insane. Anyway, I was kind of nervous at this camp because I knew I'd probably get a panic attack. It was the second night, and we were camping in the bush in 2-person tents. We were all standing around the fire as the instructors were telling us that if we moved rocks and disturbed the nature or something, that they'd kill us. So of course, I'm not listening. Everyone's moving back to the main camp to get all their stuff, and I'm the last to move. As we're going back, I feel a panic attack coming on. I brace myself because I know how shit I'm gonna feel. Except this time, it was different. It was the same nausea and cold sweats, but it felt as though I was being followed. It was like a primal reaction that I don't really know how to explain. But as we're moving, I see something move. When I say I see something move, it looked nothing like an animal or anything living. It was just a void, a blackness that moved. At first, I thought it might just be me seeing things, because my vision in the dark is, well, pretty shit. I haven't had my vision tested anyway, but this was more than just a vision issue. Because it fucking moved. I can't explain it, but it's like it rolled in the trees. And I know it was something because the ferns it passed through rustled. The trees also swayed a bit, but the main thing I noticed was the cold. Now, I'm sure you know how hot Australia is. It was only winter and the night was still 25 degrees Celsius, which is around 77 Fahrenheit. But this thing, I swear it turned the air to something like 5. It was now that I realized I was standing still, and this thing was approaching. When I realized this, I just ran straight back to the group. After that, the panic attack faded, like usual. But that event stuck in my mind. When we went back to the campsite, I didn't see the thing again, thankfully. To this day, I can only see it as some kind of lucid dream or a hallucination from the panic attack. I don't believe in spirits or demons, so I'm convinced this is the answer. But one thing stays with me that makes me question my belief. That morning, when we woke up, we stood around the burned out fire. And when I looked back at where the thing had been, all the plants that had been in its presence were dead. The ferns it passed through and the trees that were all dead and decaying. I couldn't understand how this had happened so quickly or why they were the only dead ones. And I know for a fact that these plants were not like that before. We even got told off by the instructor for sleeping under a dead tree the next morning because it was dangerous. But when we had put the tent up under the tree that night, it was definitely alive.